OGN is not owned by Riot Games. OGN doesn't have to follow the format set out for the NALCS or the EULCS. They can create whatever they believe is the most competitively viable tournament and tournament bracket, and they basically did just that. I mean, Korea and effectively OGN have produced the best League of Legends players on Earth. Everyone's talking about RNG, but Royal is essentially a Korean team. It's Monte and Looper. These players came out of this competitive scene and this tournament scene. I think it's important to remember that OGN has no interest in promoting Riot or League of Legends. OGN is a separate broadcasting channel. They have only the interest in making the best possible tournament. So what are Riot Games' interests? Well, basically Riot Games' interests are to increase viewership for League of Legends and to satisfy as much of that viewer base as possible. When it comes to the format of the NALCS and the EULCS, best of ones proved to be incredibly detrimental to the development of the teams. Even if NA teams were competing on a similar level to Korea and China, they never really got the best of threes experience they needed to play those longer drawn out series. It's not like this was a controversial opinion. I mean, players, coaches, analysts, people came out to voice their discontent for this format. But I think what really pushed it over the edge is that Montecristo specifically pushed the idea, even on OGN broadcasts, that Riot was doing a disservice to the West. They formatted their tournament in a way where it was impossible for the teams to compete with Korea, and the narrative that Riot tried to tell was essentially that North America and Europe were competing on the same footing. Specifically on this point, on the way in which Riot formats their competitive leagues, Monte has time and time again stood in front of the community and said, this is the reason the West can't produce a team that beats China and Korea. And time again, Riot has essentially stuck their head in the ground and said, no, that's not true. This suits our larger number of teams, and never essentially addressing that it's for the viewer, not really for the competitive integrity of the league. So that's just one issue on which OGN's casters and Riot differ. There are plenty of other issues. If you've ever watched the OGN stream, the casters will frequently talk about things you will never hear discussed on a Riot-sanctioned stream, such as the name of Doa's high school rock band. No, but in all seriousness, they are allowed to say things that Riot casters aren't. It shows. I mean, they talk about everything. The competitive integrity of the current patch, whether they think Riot did a good job balancing it. They talk about the impact recent decisions made by Riot has had on the competitive scene, and they don't hold back. Monte, Doa, Papa Smithy, all the casters at OGN say what they believe about Riot and the competitive integrity of League of Legends. So sometime in late 2015, Riot decided that they were going to split the Korean League of Legends cast between OGN and Spot TV. The community backlash was so large that they retracted the decision and gave back, I believe it was the spring split at that point, to OGN. So what does this really mean? Riot said that it was in the interest of making sure people could watch the team that they wanted to. That it would be a benefit for the viewer, essentially. And while there are some arguments to be made for that, I think there's one glaring inconsistency that just doesn't really add up. And that's basically that this isn't being implemented anywhere else. Korean League of Legends is the only place where Riot is trying to split the broadcast. So, what's actually going on here? What is Riot trying to accomplish by cutting OGN in half? Well, imagine that you have this landowner, right? We'll call them R. And these two tenants, O and S. Again, no relation to OGN and Spot TV. So, O, he's been on the farm a long time. He's hardworking. And they took what was essentially this arid wasteland and created this crop to be harvested by R. And then along comes S. And one day R, the landowner, goes to O and says, hey, I'm just going to take half this land and give it to S. You guys can just share it, I guess. From the outside, that seems fair, but O worked really damn hard. We're talking, weekends, overtime, with no benefits. They put their blood, sweat, and tears into producing this crop, and S has done none of that. What does R say? Well, when O comes to R and says, this isn't fair, I created this prosperity, R basically says, I don't give a damn. I own this land, I'm gonna do what I want, tough luck, kid. And so the issue becomes, OGN really did put in a tremendous amount of work, and still does to this day, to make League of Legends a popular esport. By splitting the broadcast, Riot is slapping them in the face. They are saying, we don't care that you put in all this work. All we care about is the viewer. And oddly enough, it's not even necessarily the viewer they care about. I think it's more or less trying to strong-arm OGN out of as much of broadcasting League of Legends as they can, without openly making it look like they're trying to strong-arm OGN out of the broadcast. For all his mistakes, Montecristo is pretty much the Upton Sinclair of the League community. He is always the first one to point out when Riot is sacrificing the competitive integrity of the game for their own benefit. And if Riot succeeds in strong-arming Monte and OGN, they will have succeeded in creating a homogenized League of Legends esport. I think that their implied goal is to reach that point where there are no dissenting voices from within the broadcasts and the broadcast community. And I think that for all of the mistakes Montecristo has made, for all of the mistakes that the OGN broadcast channel has made, they have maintained the finest competitive scene that this game has ever known, which, by the way, I will point out, Riot was offering the casters of OGN less money than other freelancers at MSI. So please, don't look at me like I'm a conspiracy theorist. Riot has an agenda. They have acted on that agenda time and time again, and they will continue to, and it is up to the League community to rally against that agenda, because everyone that I know is interested in the competitive integrity of League of Legends, and that is not necessarily the first priority of Riot Games. Thanks for listening. See you guys next time.